Welcome to 28 Days and Beyond, where we celebrate and reflect on our history, our heritage, our culture, and our own authentic voice. And I'm your host, Alexander Evans, with my co-host, Mari Johnson. What's up, buddy?
How you doing?
We're going to talk about why should people vote?
I don't know.
You don't know?
No.
You don't think votes don't count?
I think votes, well, let me say it like this. Voting is important only insofar as it is a tool in a larger arsenal of methods.
Okay.
Right? I'm thinking of Mao Zedong, who said political power grows from the barrel of a gun, right? And we find that throughout history, no people has ever gotten free through the vote. Right?
Okay.
Not even South Africa, but that's a whole nother show for another conversation.
So why do you think our participation is low as opposed to other parts of the world, Afghanistan and all these other places?
You're talking about the American population?
American
in general?
population.
Not really. Well, one, because it's a sham of a political system, but that's, but I do believe that, in another episode, we talked about this celebrity worship, right?
Yeah.
Folks, what they say, folks voted more for American Idol than they did for the 2004 election. You know what I'm saying? So it's not really something that, they say that this generation is apathetic or disengaged from the system, but it's not something that's appealing to folks for whatever reason.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's important.
All right.
The key thing is they know how you vote. Do you know how they vote?
Mm-hmm.
So what happens, we don't have to go by what people say, but look at what they do. And also they would.
So what that mean? What that mean? Break that down.
Okay, break that down.
Mean?
So when legislation gets passed,
Mm-hmm.
who does it impact?
Mm-hmm.
If you represent me and I'm a constituent,
Mm-hmm.
then therefore I got to hold you accountable to the things that you promised on the campaign trail. See, because guess what? If you don't vote, you're putting people in office that pass laws that govern how we live. That's how critical this thing is.
But if you do vote, you're also putting people in office who govern how we live.
True, but if they don't represent and they don't fulfill those things,
Mm-hmm.
then we have the power to eradicate them and kick them behind out office.
So people say all the time, we have to hold them accountable. How do you hold somebody accountable?
By knowing what laws they pass and what they're responsible for and how it impacts you immediately. Too often people don't know what they vote on.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they say. But we have access to get that information.
Mm-hmm.
People don't even know, most people don't even know how the sausage get made, as they say, as far as legislation is
I'm
concerned.
sorry?
Well, in other
I don't
words,
eat
how
meat,
laws
brother.
get
I
passed.
don't know.
You know what I mean.
Yeah.
But the point about it is, people died. If they took voting away,
Mm-hmm.
watch this. If voting is not important, they wouldn't gerrymander districts and they wouldn't try to suppress the vote. So if someone is intentionally trying to prevent me from voting, therefore that tells you in and of itself it's critically important to do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right? They're like reading. People, they ain't had time. Like, the reason why they knew that if I prevent you from reading, you won't be educated, you won't be able to think critically, objectively in a constructive manner. Therefore, you won't know what I know and don't know. Therefore, you can't challenge me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why if you prevent me from doing something, it's a reason and the madness behind it.
So voting is important for some reason that we don't know, but we just know it must be important because they're telling us not to vote. They're trying to dissuade us from voting.
Hello.
Okay, so we don't know why. We just been told that it's important, so we're going to go and do it because they told us to do it. And the reason we know they're going to do it is because they're preventing us from doing it?
No.
Okay, thank
The
you.
reason
Clarify
why,
that for me.
the reason why they're preventing us from voting, because they want to get in there and not be accountable, and they make it insignificant, like it doesn't mean anything, but it does mean something because once again, that's
when you talk about this accountability, no politicians have ever been accountable to black people as a constituency, right? Including Barack Obama, right? So we talk about black voters and holding people accountable, but no one has ever been accountable and the system still continues as it is. Luckily, we don't have to have this conversation amongst ourselves. We're joined today by Melissa Robbins, who is a political consultant, and she's gonna clarify some things that need to be clarified when we come back.
So my fellow Americans, whatever you may believe, whether you prefer one party or no party, whether you supported my agenda or fought as hard as you could against it, our collective futures depends on your willingness to uphold your duties as a citizen, to vote, to speak out, to stand up for others, especially the weak, especially the vulnerable, knowing that each of us is only here because somebody, somewhere, stood up for us.
Welcome back to 28 Days and Beyond, and we're on set with us. We have Melissa Robbins. How you doing?
Hola.
So we had a little bantering going back and forth. Does the black vote matter?
Okay. Does the black dollar matter?
All day long.
Okay, so if the black dollar matter, then the black vote matters. Why?
Yeah.
Because if black people don't come out and attend town halls, right? Say you're having a candidates forum, right? Someone's running for a congressional district, right? The community has a right to know who's running, why they're running, what their platform is, and how will that legislation, directly impact the neighborhood. Will you bring dollars back to my community, right? You know, what things are important to you versus what's important to me. Yes, it matters. The last thing you need is someone in Washington, D.C. representing your constituency base and they're just running amok. We don't need that.
So one of the important things to do is make a distinction between a sort of presidential election and versus local elections. Obviously, you know, being that one is every 4 years,
Right.
And then the local elections having a much more direct impact on your
Absolutely.
day-to-day life. In terms of the national election, black people make up 13% of the national population.
This is true.
So numerically speaking, how significant is the black vote in that scene?
Well, I would say nationally, it makes a huge difference, right? You talk about black people alone being 13%, and we talk about communities like Philadelphia, right, where blacks live amongst Latinos, and you have the same experience, right? The schools, the neighborhoods, the local economy is impacted. So you say black people 13%, but voting patterns are going to be somewhat similar, right? So yes, that 13% helps, because if you put it together or you marry it with the Latino vote and you have the same issues or the same concerns in the same communities where populations, cross over, then it matters, right? It does matter. But local politics matter more. Local everything matters more, because it comes down to what resources are coming back into your neighborhood. Are your schools well funded? Are your roads paved well? Are your daily services? What's going on with your services in your communities, right? So you have to get out there and vote. And if you don't vote, then you're just ignored. You're ignored.
How do you go about educating people or informing people as a political consultant why it's critically important to vote, and also hold people accountable, and also know what laws are being passed that impacts people?
Let's back up to the fact that civics is not being taught in schools.
I agree.
Can we start there?
Yeah, we start there.
So if our kids are not being educated the importance of civics, the process, how does a bill become a bill? I grew up in a time where even when I was a kid, I knew what a bill was and the process of it, because it was put into the form of a cartoon. So when I got into, middle school and high school, it was second nature. I knew what I was talking about in my civics classes, but today's children don't have access, right? So if they feel like none of this matters to me, but they have no clue, the kids, the parents, the neighborhoods, how voting impacts them, how bills are made, how to hold politicians accountable, not knowing that it's all public access, not knowing that you can actually look at your congressman, what did he or she vote on, right? These are my issues, when this came onto the floor, did they vote? Did they not vote? Did they vote in support of me? All that information is public, but most people don't care, because they feel like when I'm out there on the ground talking and engaging to voters, I hear the same thing over and over again, and it pains my heart. I'm not into that. I don't do that. It doesn't make a difference. They are going to do what they want to do anyway. So a lot of people, let's face it, we live in a very, very apathetic society where they feel like no matter what they do, it will not change their circumstances. And this is the reality that we're living in. They feel like, our system is rigged, it's jacked, no matter what I do, behind closed doors, things are going to take place. Look at the Electoral College. Why is it that 3 million people voted for Hillary, all these votes, and this guy still won? People, if they have no clear understanding of what actually takes place, then they're going to doubt the system, and they're going to feel like it doesn't matter.
But are they completely wrong in their skepticism of the system? Particularly as black, particularly black people.
No, and the reason being is because you both know historically, America has never given us people of color, particularly black people, a reason to trust anything about this country. So no, they're not wrong in their skepticism, not at all.
What do you think civics is not taught? And how come they won't pass legislation that they want to put that in schools, in the curriculum?
I mean, let's be honest. An educated society is a progressive society, right? The less we know, the less power we have, right? I heard you say earlier, why is it, when I read the stories of the experiences of slaves, not the ones that, not the stories of Sojourner Truth, the stories of Harriet Tubman, but I'm talking about those untold stories, right? And you find out that slaves were kept in holes, chained to a chain. If they were caught reading, they were whipped. Why would you whip me if I read? What is it that this book will do for me, right? So we all know that it benefits a certain percentage of our country to keep another certain percentage of our country in the dark and uneducated. If you're uneducated, you can be controlled. The more education you have, the more power, the more say-so. I mean, think about it. You go out there, you get some education, you galvanize your community, right? What they don't know, you share with them. Then all of a sudden, we have people that know that I don't come into office, but how many days out of the year I'm physically in the office? How many times do I vote? Oh my God, my congressman doesn't even vote. Okay, let's organize and let's vote him or her out. Then all of a sudden, I may be out of a job and I'm losing power. And we can't let that happen, can we?
We're just getting started with Melissa Robbins. When we come back, we're going to dig a little bit deeper.
We need every American to stay active in our public life, and not just during election time, so that our public life reflects the goodness and the decency that I see in the American people every single day. It is not easy. Our brand of democracy is hard. But I can promise that a little over a year from now, when I no longer hold this office, I will be right there with you as a citizen, inspired by those voices of fairness and vision, of grit and good humor and kindness that have helped America travel so far. Voices that help us see ourselves not first and foremost as black or white or Asian or Latino, not as gay or straight, immigrant or native born, not Democrat or Republican, but as Americans first, bound by a common creed.
We're back with 28 Days and Beyond, and we're going to dig a little deeper. Melissa, who deserves the black vote?
Who deserves the black vote? That is an excellent question. Okay, so just to share a little bit about my background, during this recent presidential election, not only did I support Senator Sanders from Vermont, but I also worked for his presidential campaign. So who deserves a black vote? One who's not afraid to speak truth to power, stand in their own truth, and not back down. And Bernie was the only presidential candidate who did that, who was not afraid to ask those uncomfortable questions, right? And when he was, when he was wrong, he accepted being wrong, he apologized. But what he did was he dug deeper and he talked to people about their issues. I mean, real issues that impact the black community, not dancing around it for the cameras, right? Bernie went, you saw he had Killer Mike on his campaign, and Nina Turner. We all know she tells it like it is, right? So what he did was he said, look, we see what's happening in black neighborhoods. We see the disproportionate numbers in prisons with black men. We see the way that black youth are being treated, right? So a person like Bernie, who is fearless and not afraid to speak truth to power, those are the people that deserve the black vote.
I thought for a second you were going to say you deserve the black vote. You know what I'm saying?
I deserve the vote.
You got on all black.
But one of the things that really you talk about, Bernie Sanders and this whole campaign process really brought to the fore a conversation that folks have been having for a long time, and that's breaking away from the two-party system.
Oh gosh.
Michelle Alexander has been very vocal about the idea of black people sort of breaking this almost pathological dependence on the Democratic Party and forming maybe a third party or groups who feel like their voices aren't being heard or represented. forming an alternative to this two-party system. What do you make of that?
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, historically, we know that the Democrats have always gotten the black vote, which meant that they didn't really have to work for it, right? I know that I have your vote. I can continue business as usual, and nothing will change, right? So you cannot give your vote and not demand something, right? You get my vote in exchange for this is what's going on in my community. These are the problems that my brothers are having on the streets with the cops. These are the problems that my children are having in school. These are the problems that plague us in the workplace, right? Make some changes here, right? Look at what percentage of blacks who are unemployed, right? Look at black youth, to be more specific, right? The unemployment rate is even higher, right? So why should we hand our vote over to Democrats who are not going to do anything?
Well, let me ask you a question with that being said. A lot of people distracted, no excuse. And then we got to say, folk need to be woke, awaken, use that terminology. How can we get people to wake up to what's happening, like you say, and people being taken advantage from their votes, being, hey, they're just going to vote for me because it's Democrats and they have always done something. How can we just really get people to understand, get off your hind parts and get involved?
Well, people have to get really, really uncomfortable. And I think this last election alone was like an awakening to a lot of people that just thought that we were okay, right? We're on easy street. We're going to be okay. We've never had to experience what our parents and grandparents, we've heard the stories, right? Of police brutality in extreme way, dogs being sicked, water hoses being beaten across the head with batons, thrown in jail. We've never experienced that up close and personal, being denied your rights, thrown out of restaurants, guns being pulled out. We've heard about it, but we've never experienced it, right? So all of a sudden we see an increase in police shootings, right? And we see these police walking away, right? All of a sudden, we've never ever seen our country in such a state, have we? Right? All of a sudden, the Trayvon case happens, the Mike Brown case happens, the Freddie Gray case happens, and it's happening all over the United States, right? People are waking up, the youth are getting involved, right? Outside of the protest, then what's next? What's next is understanding how you can really make a difference. Knowing that there is a person in the White House right now and he's surrounded by white supremacists, right? We have to do something. We know, people like us know that 2018 is right around the corner, right? So you have to have these conversations wherever you go, right? You just don't wait until you get in a barbershop to have the conversations. I have these conversations regularly with everyone that I come in contact with because it's going to affect us all. We don't do anything in 2018 and ensure that the people that are in office truly represent us and will not back down. And when it's time to vote on things like a confirmation with a woman who's completely unqualified to lead our education department nationally, then guess what? When we realize that, okay, this is the person that confirmed her, 2018, you got to go.
But here's my struggle with this, because you mentioned the sort of historical, hoses and dogs sick on. That didn't stop because of voting. That stopped because of direct action protest.
Exactly.
So how are we going to, because the fact is, Freddie Gray, Mike Brown, they were all killed under a black president, right? Like all of those things that we've been seeing, although they've been happening now, they're being broadcast more, all happened during a time in which black participation, political participation in terms of voting, was higher than it's been in the past several elections. Is voting alone the answer?
Voting alone is not the answer, because if you think about it, if we just continue to vote, okay, now it's time to select leaders in your community. Case in point, right? We talk about Ferguson, right? Look at the percentage of white officers, right? Who were tasked with policing the areas, and they don't look anything like them, right? Look at Philadelphia, right? I live in the suburbs, right? Each morning I get on I don't live in the suburbs, I live in Fox Chase, so it's a neighborhood, outside of the city, right? So I get on the train each morning, right? On my train, white police officers coming into the city. That alone is problematic, right? So we have to address things like that locally, right? Because if we have police officers that come from the community, understand the makeup of the community, and know people in the community, that alone will decrease crime. Now, I'm sure that a lot of police officers or police departments don't want their crime to decrease, because that means jobs are going to be impacted. So I think this story is much bigger, in the big scope of things, but that's just one thing. Having people in your community to police your community. Another thing, when we had those cases, right? Who are the attorney generals in these states, right? What do the attorney generals look like, right? Are we having those conversations when we go to vote on the attorney general? Do we have someone that comes with a nice shiny tie and glasses and they know exactly what they're talking about? Do they really connect? Do they know this community? Have they been in this community, right? So we have to think about each level of government and how that impacts us, right? So we know that all of these police officers got off, right? So who's holding them accountable? Nobody's holding them accountable. So it goes on up to the federal level. Now we have who? This guy, Jeff Sessions, right? So what is he gonna do? I'll tell you what he's gonna do. Business as usual.
The other thing is we can't take off the hook people who represent the system that look like us too, black police chiefs, black mayors, black congressmen, when police brutality happens as well. I mean, I consider local politics is your family, right?
Absolutely.
The president is your cousin. We need to fix the family first.
Well, no, you touch on a really, really great point because, you know, we have a lot of politicians sitting in office that look just like us and do not, you know, they don't make good decisions that, you know, that we benefit from, right? So that's when we start holding people. I mean, we don't only hold them accountable, we hold them all accountable. But that's why I talked about the importance of having the right person in office. Bernie Sanders wasn't black. People ask me, Melissa, you know, in some races, are you voting for this person because they're black? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm not voting for a person because they're black. I'm voting for them because we align. We have similar issues that we care about. And clearly with Senator Sanders, the man's from Vermont. I'm in Philadelphia. But I saw his passion and his fire, and he cares. So yes, I will vote for a person like that. I will work for him. So you don't have to be black. Clearly you don't. Black politicians make bad decisions all day. As we know, we're in Philadelphia. We see this happening. And you know what? When they're wrong, we call them out and we get them out and we get the right person in office. And that doesn't matter what color they are.
Melissa Robbins, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll have our final thoughts.
It may be more accurate to say that Trump didn't win this election so much as Clinton lost it. One of the big reasons proposed for this low Democratic turnout is that Clinton simply did not widely appeal to Democratic voters following the defeat of Bernie Sanders. Many of those who did not support her in the primaries reported feeling coerced into voting for her on the basis that she simply wasn't Trump. States where Sanders won the primary, such as Wisconsin, didn't see the support Clinton needed to win in the general election. Many of the same rural working-class voters who cast their vote for Sanders may have been more inclined to vote for any outsider candidate rather than necessarily any Democrat. Those who voted for Bernie Sanders, white men and millennials, voted Republican at higher rates than in previous elections. Exit polls even show that more Democrats voted for Trump than Republicans voted for Clinton. And while Clinton got more votes overall from minorities, millennials, and those making under $50,000 annually, Trump was able to secure a larger portion of those demographics than in previous elections. The 2016 election was also marked by extreme voter apathy, despite the volume of rhetoric in the lead-up. According to some reports, voter turnout was the lowest it's been since the 2000 election, with nearly half of all eligible voters abstaining. This election has proved wrong nearly every political model used to predict the winner.
Welcome back to 28 Days and Beyond, and we're here with our final thoughts. Melissa, how can we get people to commit to the change they want to see when it comes to being involved in this process?
I think we're going to really have to really understand the importance of grassroots organizing. And that means your block captain, right? Having those small meetings, right? And then having those meetings with the bigger meetings with your committee people and your ward leaders. But we have to get down to block by block by block by block, going house to knock. What are some of the things that you care about? What's the condition of your school? Do you have access to fresh fruits and groceries? Do you live in a food desert? Having those conversations, right? And when people realize, I only make $7.25 an hour. I'll never be a homeowner. My food is not good. My kid doesn't have a functioning toilet in his school or access to clean water. And we say, you deserve better. And this is what we can do to make a difference. This is what you can do. It may not be a lot, but this is what you can do. When we empower people and we make them feel valued and we go to them and we tell them, we care about you, we care about what you think. You may not be able to articulate it in the way that one would on television, but you have to let people know that they matter. I'm not talking about showing up with a shiny suit and a black car. I'm talking about going to the neighborhood and sitting in a house where the chair is breaking down. So what? It's a person, they matter. Have those conversations, make people feel like they matter, and they'll come out there. Everybody's not, but I tell you, it'll make a world of a difference. You have to let people know that they matter. They just have to.
I like that.
Well, one of the things that comes to mind is, but you also have to have candidates who are worthy of the support of the people. How do we put pressure on these candidates to become more accountable in a way that's not like, we'll give you a chance? You know what I'm saying? Like,
we say things like this. Boom, boom, boom. These are the 3 things that this community cares about.
right.
Do you agree with this? Yes. If you do, we will knock doors for you. We will get petition signs for you. We will have fundraisers. We will support you. When you get there, if you don't vote, you're out. And we say, if you can't agree, then fine. We will find a candidate that will commit to these major issues, and we will support this person, and we will come out in force, right? That's how you hold them accountable. You tell them, we'll knock your doors, we'll make your phone calls, we'll have the fundraisers, we will be behind you. We'll go to all the home and schools. We'll go to Miss Such and Such who's 80 or 70 that can't get out to vote. We'll talk to her about you. But if you do not deliver on your promise, you will have to see us again, and we will vote you out.
That's it. Melissa Robbins, we want to thank you for joining us here on 28
was
Days
my
and
pleasure.
Beyond, where we reflect and celebrate our history, our heritage, and our culture in our own authentic voice. Until next time, peace.